Hi, welcome to episode 5 of Cracking the Codex Adeptus Mechanicus. This week we're going to be looking at the Data-psalm Conclave. How are you feeling about this one, John?
Yeah, it's one of the detachments I think that I'm slightly underwhelmed by, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there must be some secret sauce in there somewhere. Like maybe if we check underneath the sofa cushions or something, there might be something.
Well,
Hopefully.
I was thinking maybe if we crack the top of the Dune Riders, we might find some spicy electrics inside. We'll see. This is definitely one that feels a little bit less obviously competitive at the surface, but I think there's some
Yep.
interesting things you can do with it. I'd like to get more games on the table with it to really say whether it's competitively viable or not, but I think there's some fun things you can do with it to play as a little bit more melee leaning army in a way that you can't really do with any of the other detachments.
Yeah.
So, Data-psalm Conclave. What do you get? You get the Benediction of the Omnissiah. At the start of the first battle round, you select one of the following to be active for Cult Mechanicus units until the end of the battle. Now, key to note, Cult Mechanicus is fairly reductive. You've got the Electro Priests, the two squads there. You've got the Breaches and Destroyers, the Cataphrons. And then you've got the Dominus, Enginseer, Manipulus, Techno-Archaeologist, and Belisarius Call. And then any unit that they join will be a Cult Mechanicus unit, which really means the units that we've said already, and then Rangers and Vanguard. So you can't put these buffs onto some of the units that you might want to, like the faster melee units, but there is still some play there to play in
Mm.
a more melee style. So the two buffs you can get, there's Pangyric Procession, which is each time a Cult Mechanicus model makes a ranged attack that targets a unit within half range, improve the AP by 1. Solid. You could take this and run a very standard AdMech list and just be playing the same list in a slightly different way. Or you can go Citation and Savagery, which is each time a Cult Mechanicus unit from your army is selected to fight. If it charged, until the end of phase, add 1 to strength and attacks on the melee weapons equipped by models in that unit. This is interesting. It's I'd have preferred +1 attacks and AP. I think the strength on things in this that you can buff are already quite good, so getting the extra AP there would be nice. But you know, we'll have a look, see if there's anything we can do with it. Key to note: this is obviously paired with the you pick the Doctrine imperative, so you're making two pre-game choices effectively as to how your army is going to be played, which gives you a little bit of flexibility depending on how you build your list. Stratagems. Starting off, we have got 3 battle tactics. As always, you're probably not going to be reducing the cost, but you might be having your cost increased by Cladius Assassin or something of that ilk. We've got Incantation of Iron Soul for 1 CP. This is any phase after you allocate a mortal wound, not dev wounds, remember, a mortal wound to Cult Mechanicus models from your army, and that unit gets a 4 up feel no pain against mortal wounds. This is nice in very specific matchups. A lot of the time, it's not going to really make any difference,
Yeah.
but if you're, for example, playing against Thousand Suns, you're going to be taking a lot of mortal wounds. Putting that on your breaches is quite nice. Then we've got Chant of the Remorseless Fist. In the fight phase, you select 1 Cult Mechanicus from your army that has not been selected to fight, and you get +1 to wound. This does stack quite nicely with the +1 strength. You can get some interesting breakpoints. You might be wounding units on 2s and 3s where you would have been wounding on 4s and 5s before. 1 CP, not always going to use it, but if you're trying to lean into the melee power of this detachment, 1 CP +1 to wound is solid. We've also got Luminescent Blessing. This is single CP again. They're all 1 CP, good to note. And this is in your opponent's shooting phase after an enemy unit has selected its targets. 1 Cult Mechanicus unit from your army that has been selected gains a 4-up invulnerable save. This does go on the breaches, which is often where it's going to be used. This is where you can really start to make quite a strong brawler unit that can resist melee and then has some output in the shooting phase as well. If you're looking to put a Dominus into the squad, giving a feel no pain to the squad and also giving them a 4-up invuln against shooting, you can have a really tanky brick of breaches that your opponent wants to charge to deal with. And then there are other ways to layer, offensive buffs such as fight first to make being charged a little punishing for your opponent. Moving on, we've got the Verse of Vengeance. This is in the fight phase after an enemy unit has selected its targets. You select one of your Cult Mechanicus units that has been targeted, and you get a 4+ fight on death. After a model is destroyed, roll a d6. On a 4+, it gets to fight after the unit has finished making its attacks. Solid. We do see the 1 CP for a 4-up or 2 CP for every model. Again, you're wanting to lean into a little bit more melee with this detachment, I think, so having that is quite nice. It's not super consistent because it's a 4-up, but it is one of those that makes your opponent have to think about how they play. Tribute of the Emphatic Veneration, 1 CP. Start of your movement phase, select one Cult Mechanicus unit within 18 inches. That enemy unit must take a battle shock test. If it's failed until the start of your next command phase, until each time a model in that enemy unit makes an attack, -1 to hit. This is odd. It's a medium ranged ability. 18 inches isn't too punishing with the way that the game is played at the moment. But it is before you move, which is, it's a choice. And then it's -1 to hit. It's fine, but it's on a keyed off a battle shock test. I don't think I'm spending a CP on this one ever, really. How about you, John?
It's a gamble, isn't it? It's like
It
if
really
it
is.
works, and it means that you've probably positioned yourself the previous turn ready to do it.
Mm,
That's a lot of setup for very little potential reward. So
yeah.
I'd rather just shoot them instead.
Yeah, and if this was something that was worth slamming every turn, if it was like a very valuable stratagem, a canny opponent would be aware of it, and they could position outside of the 18 inches, which is, fine. It's also in the movement phase, so it doesn't really affect you in terms of being able to, score more
Yeah,
primary if you're trying to deny primary that way, or have the hold more. Really, the main use for it I see is trying to force a battle shock so your opponent fails and can't use defensive stratagems on a squad, which is fine. But it's, again, you're making them take a roll, which
mm,
I'm not excited about. Finally, we've got Litany of the Electromancer. This is in your shooting phase, and you select one Cult Mechanicus unit from your army. You roll 1d6 for each enemy unit within 6 inches of one or more Cult Mechanicus models in the unit, adding 1 to the result if the model is an Electro Priest. On a 5+, that enemy unit takes d3 mortal wounds. This is fine. It's weird timing because realistically, if you're trying to get Electro Priest into your opponent and get them deep into your opponent's lines, tag lots of units, this would be much stronger if it was at the end of the fight phase, perhaps, or
mm.
the end of the charge phase. As it is, I think it's the stratagem doesn't really know what it wants to do, I feel.
It feels like one to me that if they've got a string of something screening what you want to charge into, and
Hmm.
you've got nothing else that can really shoot them, or they're quite survivable, you might do it just to get past, say, an invuln.
Well,
It's just very niche, isn't it? It's like I'm trying my best to think of a situation I'd want to use it, and it's just like in that one situation it'd be useful.
yeah.
But even then,
Yeah, it's very much a sort of, we're struggling to find uses for it even when we're going into the theoretical.
yeah,
But that's fine.
exactly.
There's
It's
plenty of stuff to spend your CP on with this detachment.
yeah,
Moving on to the enhancements. These are, again, not ones that I'm super excited about. Um, they are at least quite cheap across the board. Starting off with the Mechanicus Locum. For 10 points, a Tech Priest model gains a 6-up leadership, better leadership than the base 7 that it has. And then once per battle, at the start of any phase, you get to select a Cult Mechanicus unit that's battle shocked, and within 12 inches, that unit is no longer battle shocked. This, unfortunately, doesn't work for scoring you primary because you
shame.
roll the battle shock tests after um, the start of the turn, not turn,
Come on,
the
face.
phase. Yes, the command phase. Thank you. So the way that the sequencing works is you get to the start of the command phase where you could turn off battle shock, then your opponent rolls the then your unit rolls the battle shock test, and then after this point, it's too late and you're not scoring any primary. I'm not super impressed. It basically just opens up defensive stratagems or tries to prevent your opponents from stopping you from stopping them from scoring. But it's 10 points. So, if you've got 10 points spare, sure, chuck it on a model.
Yeah,
We've got the Mantle of the Nostiarch for 15 points. This is a Tech Priest model only. Each time an attack is allocated to the bearer, change the damage characteristic of the attack to 1. Fine. I'm not particularly interested in sniping out Tech Priests, I think, in
no.
AdMech. It's not something that I'm going to go out of my way to do in melee specifically, and they tend to be too tanky to snipe out with general snipers as well. So this feels like a bit of an odd one. Data Blessed Auto Summon. 20 points. This is a tech priest model. Once per battle at the start of your command phase, you select the benediction of the Omnissiah you did not select at the start of the first battle round. Until the start of your next command phase, that benediction is current for the bearer's unit in addition to the one that is currently active for your army. So basically, if you've built to go melee, you put this on your key shooting unit. If you built more shooting led, you put this on your key melee unit, and that way you can get the once per game buff. It's fine. I'm not upset at having it. Mostly, if you're playing melee and you want to stick a strong shooting unit in, I think that's it's decent. Finally, we've got the Tempocotia. We'll call that one. 25 points. Tech priest model. The bearer's unit has the fight first ability. This is great. You're trying to lean into the melee strength of the book in this attachment, so you're probably putting this on either a unit of a unit of electro priests or a unit of breaches, and you're going to try and make it punishing for your opponent to charge you. I think this is a fairly strong ability to put on middling melee units, but it does help push them over a sort of bar of usability. So we have put together a list here for the Data-psalm Conclave. I don't think this is the most competitive list going that you could make with this. I think if you wanted to play the most competitive Data-psalm where you could, you'd probably just go lean into the shooting. However, we don't see Electro Priests on the table pretty much ever, and I think they are interesting at the very least. So I was quite excited to give them a whirl. So the list is 2 Manipulus that go with the 2 Cataphron Breaches, the 6 squads. They have the regular arc rifles. Then we've got a single squad of the Cataphron Breaches, which have gone for the torsion cannons. This is something that you might want to use just for clearing chaff. We've got Dominus and a Techno-Archaeologist. Both of those go with one of the 10-man squads of the Electro Priests. I haven't put it on there, but the Archaeologist has got the Tempocotia, which gives the fight first to the squad of Electro Priests, just makes them harder to deal with. The Dominus is quite a beefy unit. It gives the Electro Priest that's joined a 4-up Feel No Pain on top of the 5-up invuln they already have, and the -1 to be wounded for being joined by a character. And then the Techno-Archaeologist is more of an aggressive focused unit where your defense against melee is fights first there. We've got the couple of Dune Riders for them to ride in. Electro Priests are not the fastest unit in the game. Being able to stage behind terrain in a transport is obviously very strong. We've got the usual, 2 squads of Vanguard, 1 squad of Rangers. Want to make sure that those breaches are unlocked on their rerolls to hit. And then we've got some scoring units as well. 2 squads of 5 on their Tarazzi Skystalkers, a single squad of 5 on the Scarran Infiltrators, and then we've got the usual 2 Sidonian Dragoons with tasers, because they're just so efficient. Really strong unit to have, even if your list is not sort of focused into that. Having a little bit more melee pressure is quite nice in this list, where you're trying to lean into melee, even if it doesn't get the normal buffs. How do you feel about this list, John?
See, as a list, I know it's not necessarily going to do everything very well, but the fact that it's got some melee threats, it's got the good shooting, it's got the scoring units, I feel like you're going to enjoy it. And like when you named it Electro 3-2. I'd be quite happy doing that. Like, you're not just going, here's a bunch of breaches and then some other bits. This is actually, there's other things that are going to do stuff. Like the Electro Priests, when they get into combat, they will make a mess.
Yeah.
By 10th edition standards, at least.
Yes,
it's nice that we'll get to see them, and it's like, I think that'll give people a pause for thought as well, because they'll look and go, okay, what do I actually need to do with these guys? And you have to respect them, because if you don't, they are going to hurt you. They will clear some things, and they'll take away your scoring units at least, and then suddenly, if you're playing mission play that is fixed or something like that, if they're chewing through stuff that's in the mid-board, you're not doing your deploy teleport homers, and suddenly you're then having to try to be a bit more assertive. And I think this sort of list can be chewy enough to get through as well, because you think, oh yeah, I'll just deal with the breaches, and then you're like, okay, well there's all these Vanguard, there's 2 Dune Riders, which in their own right are great for holding objectives. Like we've seen this countless times now in lists where you get a vehicle of some sort with more than OC1, and it's just annoying because they're sticky, and you don't really want to be shooting that. So it helps score, and I like that. This gives enough problems for people that they're not just going to go, right, I just know exactly what I need to do.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a list that'll take people by surprise when you put it on the table. You tell them you're playing AdMech, you put down the 15 breaches, and then you proceed to try and charge them. It's not what they'd be expecting when you play against it.
I'm all in.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, hope you've enjoyed this one. We are on now to the last of the detachments tomorrow.